Hey guys, tonight we're pulling back the veil on one of history's most romanticized lies, the virgin bride. You've seen her in fairy tales, blushing, innocent, walking toward a happily ever after. But the real Middle Ages, she wasn't walking toward a future, she was being led into it, like livestock. She was 12, he was 41, and the wedding night? It wasn't love, it was obligation. This was the dark reality of marriage in medieval Europe, where purity was currency, and a girl's body was never really hers to begin with. This is why it sucked to be a virgin bride in the Middle Ages. And trust me, once you know what actually happened behind those stone walls and chapel doors, you'll never look at happily ever after the same way again. So, before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You're 12 years old and sitting on a stool that creaks beneath you. You've just been promised. Not to a man, but to a contract. A deal inked in ale, sealed with a nod, and traded over a wooden table that smells like old meat and spilled wine. You weren't at the negotiation. You didn't get to raise your hand. But your life, it's been signed over like a sack of barley. The man they've chosen for you is 41. He has a mustache that drips into his soup and a gut that could anchor a fishing boat. He's missing 3 fingers from something involving sheep and a scythe, but no one brings that up because he has land, 2 fields, a barn, and a dozen pigs, half of which are still alive. Your father calls that security. Your mother calls it fortune. You call it nothing because you weren't asked. Your dowry is a sorry collection of desperation. A battered wooden chest, a sack of rye, 2 goats, and a wool cloak with moth holes big enough to see the sunrise through. There's also a rosary with half the beads missing and a hand-sewn shift that barely fits anymore. You overhear your aunt say it's a miracle anyone took you at all. You look at the floor and wonder what kind of miracle ends with your name on a parchment and your childhood in the past tense. You're told to be grateful. He's not a drunk, not a known brute. He only hit his last wife when she burned the bread and only once broke her arm on purpose. You're assured it was provoked. She talked back. That's what they say, as if the bones in her body wrote their own apology. The village whispers start the moment the deal is made. Women nod and smile tight-lipped at you, like you've just been given a responsibility too heavy to carry and not allowed to set down. Men glance at you in that new way, not as a child, but as something ripening, something to be claimed. At night, your mother braids your hair while muttering prayers. She tells you not to cry. You're lucky. Some girls marry older. Some girls marry poorer. Some girls don't marry at all. As if those are the only 3 options: old, hungry, or disappeared. You start sleeping with your legs clenched tight, though no one has explained exactly why. Only that it's important. Only that purity is everything. That your worth is measured not in words or kindness or cleverness, but in a thin membrane you can't see and no one ever talks about in daylight. The church bells ring louder now. Every chime feels like a countdown. You scrub yourself raw with lye soap until your skin stings. You stitch your hem again and again, not because it needs mending, but because your hands need something to do besides shake. You stop playing with the younger girls. You stop speaking to the boys. You start shrinking in every room, hoping no one sees you, and everyone forgets. But no one forgets a virgin bride. They watch you, like milk about to spoil. They test you with questions, soft, probing, venomous. Do you know what's coming? One whispers. You pretend you do. The wedding date is set for spring. The thaw will bring wildflowers, and a man with tobacco-stained teeth who's already told your father he prefers obedience over beauty. He winked when he said it. Your father laughed. You dug your nails into your palm until they left half-moons in your skin. You're 12, and your life isn't yours anymore. It belongs to the house you'll clean, the bed you'll lie in, and the name you'll take like a sentence passed down. They say you're lucky. They say you're blessed, but you know better. You're not a bride. You're an offering, and the altar is already stained. You wake up to the sound of chickens fighting under your window, and your mother humming through clenched teeth. She's grinding herbs with the heel of her palm, muttering about fertility and luck, though neither has ever done her much good. You roll onto your back and stare at the thatched ceiling, watching dust float like ghosts. The sun isn't up yet, but it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to sleep in anymore. Not now that you're a bride-to-be. Your chores have doubled. Your silence is now praised. Every time you speak, someone tells you to save your breath for married life. You scrub the floor with vinegar until your knees ache. Then you're told to do it again, this time with more grace. You're learning the rhythm of invisible expectations. How to move, speak, exist without making anyone uncomfortable. You're practicing obedience like it's a second language, one you'll be tested on later. At breakfast, your father doesn't look at you. Not out of shame, but because there's nothing left to say. The deal is done. You're an entry in his ledger. Your mother gives you a bowl of oats and tells you to chew slowly, to keep your face clean, to sit like a lady, even if the bench is splintering beneath you. You're not allowed to frown. Not in front of the neighbors. Not even when you bite your cheek so hard it tastes like iron. Pain is expected. But visible discomfort? That's ungrateful. You walk to market with a basket balanced on your hip. Every step feels like a performance. The boys you grew up with, the ones who used to throw stones at rats and mud at each other, now glance at you like they've heard stories. They have. You hear them laugh when you pass, low and knowing, like they've already imagined your wedding night. One of them calls you madam and bows. The others snort into their palms. You keep walking. At the cloth stall, a woman offers you a scrap of lace, not as a gift, but as advice. For your veil, she says, though you haven't asked. Another hands you a bar of soap and whispers that a clean bride makes a happy groom. You nod. You don't tell her your betrothed smells like pickled eggs and doesn't blink when he talks. You don't tell her he stared at your ankles for too long last week and licked his lips after. That night, your mother rubs vinegar on your skin until it burns. She says it will ward off infection. She says it will make you fresh. You wonder if she did this before her wedding too. You wonder how many generations of women passed this ritual down like a recipe for survival. She lifts your arms, scrubs your armpits, clucks her tongue at your elbows, then tells you you'll be beautiful when you fill out. She says it softly, like it's a blessing. You feel like a calf being fattened for slaughter. Later, while brushing your hair, she begins to tell you what will happen on the wedding night. But she stops halfway through a sentence, turns the brush in her hand like it's suddenly unfamiliar, and changes the subject to moon phases. You sit there, still and silent, trying not to breathe too loud. She finishes in silence, then kisses the top of your head and blows out the candle. In the dark, you count your breaths and press your hands against your stomach. You're still flat there, still untouched, but it doesn't feel like a body anymore. It feels like something borrowed, something waiting to be claimed. You fall asleep, listening to your parents whisper in the other room. You can't make out the words, but you know what they're about. They're not discussing your dreams, or your fears, or your voice. They're discussing the linen they'll lay beneath you on the wedding night, the one that will prove everything, the one that matters more than you do. You're 13 in 2 months, and you already know how to disappear in plain sight. The cow has a limp and one cloudy eye, but your father insists it still counts. He ties a ribbon around its neck and calls it symbolic. You call it desperate. You're standing barefoot in the doorway, watching him haggle with the village broker over how much it's worth when bundled with 2 crates of barley, a moldy sack of flour, and your grandmother's wedding cross. That cross hasn't left her neck in 40 years. She pulls it off like it's burning her and drops it into the chest without looking at you. She won't meet your eyes all week. Your dowry is not a treasure. It's a bribe with frayed edges. Every item packed into that wooden chest is a whispered apology for what you aren't. Not prettier, not richer, not more connected. You were supposed to be a boy. You've known that since you were old enough to understand silence. Your brother's got boots, tools, and coin. You got chores and expectations. Now, you're getting traded. The man collecting your dowry writes everything down, with ink-stained fingers and a nose that whistles when he breathes. He clicks his tongue at the cracked butter churn and mutters that your family is lucky to be marrying you off at all. Your mother stiffens but says nothing. Your father shrugs. You bite the inside of your cheek until it bleeds. By supper, your mother is crying into the soup. She says it's the onions. You know better. She spent the day re-hemming your shift to cover your knees. Not for modesty, but because she heard your betrothed doesn't like visible scars. You have one from when you fell off a hay cart, another from when you burned your leg near the hearth, and a dozen more from living. She tries to smooth them out with spit and prayers. You're told to sit up straighter, to keep your hands folded, to smile when you don't mean it and laugh when you shouldn't. You're told a good bride is like bread, soft, warm, and useful, and that it's better to be eaten than discarded. You don't understand how that's comforting. The village girls come by the next morning to help you prepare. You don't like most of them. They all speak in riddles now. Winks, giggles, little sharp things dressed in lace. One of them tells you to walk with a book on your head so you don't slouch like a farm girl. Another says to keep your mouth shut at meals so your husband doesn't think you're greedy. You sit there while they brush your hair and polish your shoes with pig fat. They tell you you're lucky, that some girls go with no dowry at all, just taken and forgotten. At least you have a cow. You nod. At night, you sneak into the pantry and open your dowry chest. You run your fingers over the linen, over the tin cup, the chipped comb, the bent spoon, the folded parchment, with your future husband's name in crooked letters. You find your grandmother's cross wrapped in a strip of muslin. It still smells like her skin. You almost put it on. Then you hear your father's voice through the wall, joking with someone about how lucky he is to be getting a bride off the books. Discounted, he laughs, before the moon changes. The other man laughs too. It's the kind of laugh that makes your stomach twist. You close the chest and press your palms to the lid. It's heavy now, not just with things, but with the weight of the truth. You're not the bride. You're the offering. And the chest isn't a gift. It's the receipt. The chest is older than you. It creaks when it opens and smells like mold, damp straw, and regret. It sat in the corner of the room your whole life, swallowing spiders and secrets, and now it's yours. Sort of. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the man who'll soon own you, and this is the part of you he gets to preview. Not your voice, not your thoughts, but your possessions. Or what little your family could scavenge in time. Your mother opens it with a grunt. Inside is a stack of linen, yellowed and frayed, each piece crawling with the memory of past wearers. One shift still has a tear from when your aunt miscarried in it. Another smells like mildew and lavender water, a scent your grandmother insists will make you seem fresh. They've been doused in vinegar and left in the sun, but you can still see the lice eggs stitched into the seams if you look close. You do. Then you look away. Your favorite wool blanket is folded on the bottom, the one you slept with through winters, so cold your fingers turned blue. It's stiff now, matted with years of soot and crumbs, the edges crusted from when your baby brother wet himself on it. You run your fingers across the weave and feel the scratch of hay embedded in the wool. Your mother tells you not to cry over it. It's just a blanket, she says. But it's not. It's your last comfort, and now it's being packed for someone else's bed. There's a cloth tucked carefully into a pouch, red-stained, folded 3 times, and tied with thread. Your mother handles it like a holy relic, pressing it flat and reminding you that this will be the proof. She means blood. The cloth you'll lie on your wedding night. The one that will be displayed to your husband's family like a trophy or a warrant. If it's clean in the morning, you'll be branded a liar, a fraud, a whore. If it's stained, you'll be considered worthy, broken, but officially. A comb with 4 teeth missing is nestled beside a chipped mirror wrapped in sheep's wool. You're told to look into it before the ceremony. Not too long, your grandmother warns. Vanity is unbecoming. You look anyway and barely recognize the girl staring back. Pale, tight-lipped, a threadbare braid slung over her shoulder like a noose made of hair. You smile just to see if your face still works. It does, but it looks wrong. A rosary is coiled neatly on top. It's missing the crucifix, and 2 of the beads are glued on with what looks like tree sap. Your mother says it belonged to your great aunt, the one who died in childbirth after her 4th son. She says you should keep it with you, in case the pain is bad. You ask which pain she means, the wedding night or the years after. She doesn't answer. In the corner of the chest is a pair of shoes. You've never worn them. They were made for your sister before she died of fever, and now they've been repurposed for your walk to the chapel. The leather is cracked, and the left one still has dried blood near the heel from when she coughed until her toes bled. You slip them on. They fit. Everything you'll take with you fits in this box. It smells like old wool and old women. There is no space for books or dreams or anything that might belong to you alone. Just what they think a man might want to see. Service, humility, the possibility of obedience. Your future isn't stitched in silk or scented with rosewater. It's packed into splinters and sweat, and a cross that's been kissed by too many mouths to count. Your little brother peers into the trunk and makes a face. It stinks, he says. You nod. It smells like wool and fear, and you're taking it with you. You've stopped walking past the blacksmith's shop alone. Last time he called you the locked chest, then elbowed his apprentice and roared with laughter. You laughed too, but it wasn't real. You folded it into your throat like bad meat and swallowed hard. That's what you're learning now. How to laugh when you're not amused, how to smile when you're being inspected, how to hold your posture while being measured like livestock. Your virginity isn't just an idea. It's a commodity, something talked about, traded, gossiped over like the weather or the price of barley. The butcher's wife says you have the walk of a girl who hasn't been cracked open yet. The priest preaches about purity every Sunday and glances in your direction when he says untouched. You used to blush. Now you just look at the floor and wait for the sermon to end. Your mother won't let you go to the well alone anymore, not because of danger, but because of suspicion. One whisper. One villager saying they saw you talking too long to a boy or smiling without reason, and everything falls apart. The marriage, the dowry, the arrangement. Your worth depends on what people believe you haven't done. So you say little. You move carefully. You become invisible in your own skin. Behind closed doors, it gets worse. Your aunt whispers to your mother that your hips aren't wide enough, that your chest is concerning, that you don't carry yourself with the modesty of a bride. Your mother responds with herbs, compresses, and lectures about posture. She inspects your walk, corrects your smile, warns you not to laugh too loud. Only whores laugh like that, she says, like it's a proverb. You don't argue. Your betrothed's brother came to supper last week. He stared at you over the boiled leeks like you were something roasted and ready. After the meal, he asked your father if you were properly preserved. Then he made a joke about seals breaking and hens squawking, and everyone but you found it funny. Your grandmother muttered that men will be men. You scraped your plate in silence and tried not to scream. You overheard your father boasting about you 2 nights ago. Not even kissed, he said. She's still locked up like a chapel on Monday. The men around him laughed. Full-bellied, wine-warm, proud of him for guarding your body like it was a family relic. Not once did they say your name. There's a woman in the next village who was returned. No blood on the sheets. They sent her back with a bruised face and a broken rib. Her mother said she'd fallen. Her father said nothing at all. Now she walks with her eyes to the ground and a reputation like rotting fruit. Everyone smells it. No one touches it. You see her sometimes at market, arms full of turnips, face full of shame. She's 20, practically ancient. Your virginity is not your own. It belongs to your parents, to the man who paid for it, to the priest who reminds you every week that it's sacred. It's been prayed over more than your soul, protected more fiercely than your health, and you're the one who has to bear it, like a basket balanced on your head, heavy, and always in danger of tipping over. At night, you wonder what would happen if you tripped, if you kissed someone, if you pulled a boy into the barn and said yes. You imagine the rush of rebellion, then the silence that would follow, the lost dowry, the bruises, the eyes, the end. So instead you press your legs together and your lips tighter. You hold your breath when boys walk by. You bow your head when the priest says virtue, and feel every gaze in the chapel press against your back like stones. Your body is a vault, a myth, a possession, and everyone's watching for the crack. It's not white like the stories say, not clean or shining or soft. Your wedding dress is off yellow, stiff with starch, and damp with fear sweat before you even leave the house. The sleeves itch. The neckline pinches. There's a stain near the hem you tried to scrub out with vinegar and prayers, but it's still there, faint and stubborn, like a warning that won't wash away. You stand while your mother ties the last knot at your back, hands trembling, jaw clenched so tight you hear it click. She tells you to smile. You try. It looks more like a flinch. Outside, the village gathers, not to celebrate you, but to see if you cry, to inspect the bride, to watch a girl turn into a possession. A girl who used to chase chickens barefoot is now trussed up like a sacrifice with borrowed ribbons in her hair. Your brothers barely look at you. Your father doesn't speak. The priest is already waiting at the chapel, mouthing scripture as he fingers the crucifix around his neck like it's a key that unlocks salvation or silence. You walk alone. There's no music, no flowers, just your shoes grinding against the gravel and a baby crying somewhere in the crowd. The chapel door looms ahead like a cracked jaw, its wooden mouth open to swallow you whole. Inside, it smells like mildew, old incense, and something worse, something sour and heavy, like wet wool left too long in a corner. The walls sweat. The air hangs thick. There's no magic here, just heat and breath and judgment. He's already standing at the front. Your husband-to-be, the man who bought your future with a cow, a stack of grain, and a nod. He's wearing a tunic that's too tight around his belly, and he hasn't shaved. His eyes don't blink. His lips don't move. He watches you like he's sizing up a harvest, like he's wondering if your hips can handle twins. You want to run, but your feet move forward anyway, dragged by something heavier than fear. Obligation. You count your steps. 17, 18, 19. You smell your own sweat before you reach him, and the weight of your dress feels like punishment stitched into fabric. The priest begins. Latin words echo in the small chamber like a threat no one understands. The villagers shift behind you, coughing and muttering. A dog barks. Someone sneezes. You focus on the window, cracked and clouded, where a sliver of daylight filters in like a mercy too weak to matter. You nod when you're supposed to. You don't look at him. He doesn't look at you. It's not a union. It's a transaction with candles. They tie your hands together with a strip of cloth. It's supposed to symbolize unity. It feels more like rope. The priest presses your heads together in a mock blessing and declares it done. There's no kiss, no cheer, just silence, and the sound of your heartbeat thudding in your ears like a drum leading you to the gallows. Outside, they clap, but it's not for joy. It's for tradition, for the spectacle. Someone throws a handful of stale grain. It hits your shoulder and sticks to the sweat on your arm. The sun is higher now, and the wool under your dress is soaked. You can feel it trickling down your spine, not just sweat, but the slow realization that there's no escape clause, no second chance. You're not walking away from the chapel. You're being led to the next room, the next ritual, the bed. Your new husband nods once, not warmly, not cruelly, just possession confirmed. His hand touches your back as he guides you toward the home that is now yours, in name only. You don't speak. You don't cry. You just keep walking. Your wedding dress sticks to your skin like wet parchment. It's heavy, clammy. It doesn't float or twirl or shine. It clings, like the life you didn't choose. The mattress creaks beneath you, a scratchy pile of straw and stained linen that smells like feet, old smoke, and something worse, something coppery and animal. You're still in your wedding dress, or what's left of it. The sweat has dried into patches. The bodice is half unlaced. Bits of hay cling to your thighs. You're sitting very still, because you've been told to wait here and wait quietly. Someone just whispered a blessing over you. Not for love, not for happiness, for fertility. As if the quicker your body opens, the faster your usefulness begins. The door shuts behind the last whisper. You hear the latch click. Then it's just you and him. He sways as he walks toward the bed. His boots are still on. Mud flakes off onto the floor with each step. His breath hits you before he does, thick with ale and onions and sour meat. He doesn't speak at first, just stares, like he's forgotten your name or maybe never learned it. You look down at your hands. You think of the rosary your grandmother gave you, tucked under the pillow beside your hip, its broken beads pressing into your ribs like dull teeth. He says something you don't understand, a joke maybe, or a command. He laughs alone. You try to smile. He starts unlacing his tunic, fumbling with the ties. The room is silent, except for the rustle of fabric and the sound of your own breath, sharp and shallow like you've been running. You haven't moved. You don't know when you're supposed to, or how. Then he tells you, not gently, not cruelly, just flatly, like he's ordering soup. He wants you to lie down. He doesn't say please. You obey. The straw crinkles beneath you as you shift. You keep your eyes on the ceiling. A dark patch of soot above the hearth, the outline of a long-dead spider curled in the rafters. You focus on anything but him. But that doesn't last, because now he's on the bed, and now he's touching you. His hands are rough, clumsy. There is no pause, no moment to ask if you're ready. You are not ready. You are not even present. You've gone somewhere else. Back to your mother brushing your hair, to the sound of the bell at chapel, to the smell of baked apples and the way your sister used to laugh when she caught snowflakes on her tongue. You cling to anything that doesn't touch back. He grunts. Not a word. Just noise. His beard scratches your neck. His weight crushes your hips. The bed shifts with him. You don't move. You don't cry. You just close your eyes and try to breathe smaller, like maybe you can disappear inside yourself. There is pain, sharp and immediate, like something tearing, like being hollowed with a fist. You gasp once, and he mutters something, maybe annoyance, maybe pleasure. You can't tell. You don't ask. It's quick, but not quick enough. When it's over, he rolls away without speaking. The bed groans as he stands, yanks his tunic back over his head. and stumbles to the pitcher in the corner. He drinks, wipes his mouth, and leaves the door open behind him. You lie there still, staring at the rafters, feeling the straw poke your skin through the dampness between your legs. There's blood. You knew there would be. You still weren't ready for it. Outside, someone laughs. Someone sings. You reach under the pillow and pull out the rosary. The crucifix is missing. You hold it anyway. You were told this was the beginning of your life. It feels more like the end of something. You just don't know what. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the house is already awake. You hear footsteps outside the door, slow and deliberate, like someone rehearsing an entrance. You haven't moved. The sheet sticks to your thighs. Damp, stiff, copper-scented. You feel it every time you shift, every time you breathe. Your body is sore in a way that doesn't feel like an injury or illness. It feels like an aftermath. You bled. You felt it last night. A sharp split followed by warmth, then wetness, and then the dull sting that crept into your bones. You didn't cry. You wanted to. You just gritted your teeth and pressed your face into the mattress, hoping he'd finish before your silence failed you. He didn't say anything afterward, just rolled over and snored. Now the sun is crawling toward the window, and you know what comes next. Your mother knocks once before entering. She doesn't speak. She doesn't look at you. She goes straight to the bed, peels back the corner of the sheet with 2 fingers, and squints in the half-light. You try to cover yourself, but she waves you off like your furniture. Her eyes don't soften. She's not here for comfort. She's here for proof. The blood is there, rust-red and smudged, like an accident on linen. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to claim virtue. Enough to avoid scandal. She nods once, tugs the sheet free from under your hips, folds it in half, then in quarters, then again, careful not to smear the stain. She wraps it in an old cloth and tucks it under her arm like a parcel of bread. Then she finally looks at you. You did well, she says. Her voice is flat. Like this is something she says to livestock after slaughtering them cleanly. You don't answer. Outside, the whispers start, the kind that move like smoke, slow, curling into corners. First the older women, then the cousins, then the neighbors. You hear someone laugh. You hear the word honest, and then blessed. You hear someone else say, lucky he didn't have to send her back. Every voice stings. None of them are yours. By the time you get dressed, your legs are still shaking. You pull on your shift and feel the fabric rub against raw skin. It hurts to walk. It hurts to sit, but you do both anyway. You carry a bowl of oats to the hearth and pretend to eat while your husband drinks beer with his brother. They don't speak to you directly, but you catch the glance, the nod, the grin. He's proud of himself. He says, she was quiet. They laugh. You chew your oats. Then the sheet is brought out. Your mother lays it across the table like a prized quilt. People lean in. They point. They nod. Someone makes a joke about red banners and holy signs. Another offers a toast. Someone even claps. You feel like your skin is peeling off, slowly, publicly, with a smile painted over your face, like varnish on a cracked wall. Your grandmother crosses herself and says the marriage is real now. The priest nods like he agrees. Someone places a slice of bread in your hand, like it's a reward. You eat it because your body is hungry, even if your soul is retreating. Your husband doesn't speak to you until later, just after the guests leave and the room is quiet again. He pats your shoulder like a farmer patting a mule and says, "You did what was expected." Then he lays down and starts snoring again, like it's done now, like the hardest part is over. But you're still bleeding. You're still sore. And the sheet that was supposed to protect you is now hanging from the rafters like a banner. You're 13. You've been claimed. And everyone has seen the evidence. You step outside to hang the laundry and realize the village has changed. Not the houses, not the crooked fences or the muddy paths. The change is in the eyes. They all look at you differently now, like you've crossed a line they all knew about. A quiet, blood-soaked boundary, and now you're something else. Not a girl, not a wife, just a public conversation with a heartbeat. The old women on the bench near the well don't even lower their voices. They talk about your hips like you aren't 5 paces away. One says they're narrow. The other says, that's fixable if you keep at it. One says she gave birth in a ditch during a frost and you don't look ready for anything like that. They nod solemnly. You fold a sheet over the line and pretend you're deaf. Men walk past and nod at you like you've earned a medal. One of them tosses a piece of goat cheese into your basket and says it's for the fertile one. Another offers you a real goat, limping, blind in one eye, and grins so wide his toothless gums shine. Part of your dowry refund, he jokes. You force a laugh. Then you spend the next hour wringing your hands raw, trying to get the cheese smell off your fingers. The worst are the children. Little boys with no filter and big ears. One asks if you bled a lot. Another wants to know if it hurt as bad as the pig slaughter. A third whispers, "Are you still sore down there?" and giggles like it's the funniest thing in the world. You tell them to go home. They don't listen. You go to market with your basket and feel eyes on your back the entire walk. At the fish stall, the merchant winks and says congratulations. You nod and keep your head down. He used to hand you scraps for the cat. Now he offers you oysters with a smirk and asks how many children you plan to have. Strong hips, he says. That's what matters. You nod again. You don't correct him. At church, the priest praises blessed unions and makes a long speech about womanly duties. He locks eyes with you on the word obedience. You keep your gaze on the stone floor, studying the cracks like they might open and swallow you whole. Even your family joins in. Your mother comments on your walk. More grown now, she says. He's working the woman into you. Your father says nothing at dinner, but when your husband mentions getting lucky, he chuckles into his bowl like it's the most natural thing in the world. You used to talk about bread and weather. Now everything you do is a metaphor for something else, for what happened in the dark, between the sheets, while the rest of the house pretended not to hear. Your body isn't yours anymore. It's a village event, a conversation, a benchmark. People nod when they see you like you're a field that's finally been plowed. Useful, proven. Your name barely matters. They call you his wife now. They say it like a badge or a brand. At night, you sit in the corner of the room and rub the bruises from your thighs with cold water. You think about silence and how it grows, how it settles into your mouth and makes a home there. You used to sing while you worked. Now your voice feels like a trespass. You go to bed. You lie still. And when he climbs in beside you and reaches under the blanket, you let him. Because refusal isn't part of the arrangement. Tomorrow, the village will have more opinions. They always do. And none of them will ask if you're okay. He comes to bed smelling like sweat and ale, sometimes garlic, sometimes smoke. Never words. Not the soft kind. Not even the rough kind. Just the sound of his belt hitting the floor and the mattress shifting under his weight. There's no asking, no pause, no glance to see if you're awake. Just the ritual, the routine, the rhythm you've come to dread more than winter. The first time after the wedding night, you flinched. He didn't like that. Grabbed your wrists, held them down, told you not to be dramatic. He said it with a chuckle, like it was all just a game. He smelled like meat and vinegar. His breath was hot in your ear. You bit your lip so hard it bled. Afterward, you cleaned the blood with a rag, and your mother asked if he was good to you. You said yes, because it was easier than the truth. The second time, you tried to explain that it still hurt, that you weren't healed, that maybe, just maybe, you needed time. He told you time was for sick animals and lazy men, not wives. Wives are meant to be available, ready, grateful. He used the word duty. You stopped explaining after that. Now it's just a pattern. Night falls. The fire dies. He undresses. You lie still. You don't resist anymore. You don't move either. You stare at the ceiling and count the knots in the wood. There are 7 above your head, 3 more to the left. The biggest one looks like a closed eye. You pretend it's watching, that someone is. Sometimes he finishes fast and rolls over. Sometimes he lingers, breathing heavy, hands roaming your body like a field he owns and doesn't bother to weed. He grunts, he sweats. Once, he slapped your thigh and said you were finally loosening up. You smiled, just enough to make it believable, just enough to end it faster. You don't cry anymore. Not because it stopped hurting, but because the crying made it worse. The one time you sobbed out loud, he went harder, said he'd give you something to cry about. You learned then that silence is safer, that blankness is armor, that if you leave your body, at least the pain only has one place to land. You hear other wives talk in fragments, whispers in the bakery line, hushed complaints while skinning rabbits. One woman says she pretends to be asleep. Another says she fakes a fever once a month. Another says she stabs herself between the legs with a pin to avoid temptation. They all laugh. None of it's funny. You wonder if they stare at their ceilings too. During the day, he barely looks at you. You wash his clothes, cook his food, scrape the dirt from his boots. He slaps your backside when you pass, calls you my little doe. The other men laugh. You smile on cue. You rinse the dishes until your hands are raw. You kiss him goodnight because you have to, not because you want to. You sleep on your side, back toward him, hands curled under your chin like a child hiding from thunder. But the thunder always comes. And when it does, you don't resist. You just drift, far enough away that it almost feels like someone else's body, someone else's groan, someone else's shame. You've stopped counting the times. You've stopped marking the bruises. You've stopped praying for softness. Now you just count the knots in the ceiling and hope one day you forget what they're there for. You walk to church with your thighs aching and your lips split at the corners from the cold and from biting back whatever you're not allowed to say. Your feet are swollen in your sister's old shoes, and every step feels like you're dragging a secret no one wants to hear. Your husband walks beside you, upright and proud, smelling like boiled onions and dried sweat. He doesn't speak. He never does on Sundays. He just clears his throat, wipes his nose on his sleeve, and nods to the neighbors like he's a man worth respecting. The chapel looms ahead, squat and damp, with moss curling around the stone like moldy lace. The bell rings 2-3 dull clangs, and you feel it in your ribs. Your husband places his hand on your lower back like he's guiding you, but really it's a warning. Walk faster. Keep up. Look like you belong. Inside, it's cold enough to see your breath. The pews are packed, the floor is muddy, and someone has already farted. A baby wails in the corner. A dog wanders down the aisle and curls up near the altar. The priest pretends not to see it. You kneel on the hard floor, your knees pressing into something sticky, and begin to murmur the prayers everyone knows by rote. You say the words, even when they make your throat tighten, even when they don't feel like yours. Your husband crosses himself 3 times. He smells like beer, and last night, his hands are rough, cracked from work but not gentle from it. You can still feel the bruises from when he grabbed you too hard. Not in anger, just in entitlement. You don't wince, you don't move. You bow your head deeper and say the verses with perfect rhythm. You try not to look to your left, but she's there. Agnes. She always sits 1 row over, 1 seat back. Always with her lace veil just slightly too low over her brow, like a stage curtain waiting to rise. She's older, smug, and widowed. The holy trifecta of authority. She never married again. She didn't need to. Her mouth alone could raise crops or ruin reputations. And now, she's watching you. She's always watching you. She watches how you kneel, how you cross yourself, how often you look at your husband and whether you smile when you do. Last week, she said your shawl was a bit too bright for someone still adjusting to married life. The week before that, she asked if you were feeling well, but said it in a tone that made everyone else in the room suddenly very interested in your posture. You hate her, and you fear her. Because Agnes doesn't need proof. She just needs suspicion. The priest is talking about obedience again. He does that often. Obedience, submission, the sacred duty of wives. He says God sees everything, that a woman's silence is her strength, that a man's household is his to command. Your husband nods like he's hearing it for the first time. You've heard it too many times. Someone coughs. Someone yawns. You stare at the stone wall where a crack runs down the plaster like a lightning strike. You follow it with your eyes. It feels like something inside you, old, thin, and slowly splitting open. The sermon ends. People rise. You smile. You practice it like a trade now. A skill. Lips closed, eyes soft, chin tilted. The smile of a woman who knows her place and has no complaints. The smile that says, everything's fine. The smile that fools everyone but Agnes, who raises one eyebrow and turns away without a word. You walk out with your husband's hand gripping your waist. To everyone else, it looks like affection. To you, it's just another reminder. God is watching, but so is Agnes. And in this village, only one of them talks. You're emptying the slop bucket when your stomach turns. Not a little, not the kind that passes. This is the kind that rolls through your gut like a curse, curling your spine and sending bile up your throat before you can make it to the fence. You lean over, hands gripping the wooden post, and vomit into the mud while the pigs snort nearby, indifferent. The smell of rotted food, dung and sick mixes into something thick and unbearable. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve. Your head spins. You already know. It's not the food, not the heat, not the water. It's the absence of blood. It's been 5 weeks since the last time. You counted twice. Then again, just to be sure, you told yourself it was stress, cold weather, a skipped meal. You told yourself lies that sounded better than the truth. But now your body is speaking in nausea, in dizziness, in tender aches that weren't there before. You don't say anything. You just go inside, hands shaking, and wash your face in the basin. The water is cold. You stare into it longer than you mean to. You expect to see a reflection, but all you see is ripples, a blur, something dissolving. Your mother-in-law notices before anyone else. She doesn't ask. She watches. When you turn down the bread at supper, her eyes narrow. When you pause on the stairs to catch your breath, she tilts her head. By morning, she's brought out her crochet basket and starts stitching something pale and tiny. You glance at the yarn. Cream-colored wool. Too soft for anything practical, too small for anything adult. You don't ask what it's for. You don't need to. She smiles at you like it's already decided. Your husband doesn't notice or care. He keeps eating like always, drinking like always, climbing into bed like nothing is different. You've started turning your face to the wall when he touches you, hoping maybe he'll think you're tired or praying he won't care either way. You go through the motions. You clean the hearth. You boil the linens. You sweep and scrub and gut the fish like nothing's changed. But it has. You feel it in the mornings, when the smell of eggs makes your stomach twist. You feel it at night, when your breasts ache, and you press your palm against your belly like you're guarding something you're not ready to name. At the market, someone asks if you're glowing. Another says you've put on weight. A third offers congratulations before you even open your mouth. The women laugh gently and wink. The men nod like you've fulfilled your purpose, like they knew it was coming. You start praying in secret. Not for a boy, not for an easy birth, not for health or favor or joy. You pray for time. Time to adjust, time to breathe, time to be something other than a body that opens and receives and grows. You kneel beside the bed at night and ask God to make it slow. Just give you until spring, until the snow melts, until you can go outside and feel sunlight without throwing up into your apron. But God doesn't answer. Not with words. He answers with fatigue and sore joints, and whispers from your uterus that the waiting is over. Your mother-in-law adds booties to her basket. You try not to notice. She talks about strong boys and how her hips split with the third one. You don't respond. You just stir the pottage and pretend you're not already drowning. No one asks if you're happy. They only ask when. And now every day begins with a question you can't speak out loud. What if it's not just your body that's growing, but the fear too? You smile. You nod. You lift the bucket. And you keep praying. By the end of the first month, your body doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the village. Your belly becomes everyone's business. The butcher's wife comments on how high you're carrying. The blacksmith's mother tells you not to eat turnips, or the baby will come out stupid. A girl barely older than you points to your ankles and says you're too swollen for it to be a boy. You nod. You smile. You pretend their words are gifts and not weights. Everyone has advice. No one has medicine. They say drink nettle tea to strengthen your womb. They say avoid loud noises or your child will be cursed with fear. They say don't sleep on your back. Don't look at dogs. Don't sew during storms. Your head spins with the rules. Your body doesn't care about any of them. Your back throbs by noon. Your feet feel like bags of stones by dusk. Your stomach is tight, stretched, heavy, like you've been tied to a barrel and told to keep walking. There is no rest. There is no relief. You still have to haul water, still have to gut fish, still have to bake the bread before sunrise so your husband doesn't grumble into his bowl. When you pause to stretch, someone always notices. You're not fragile, they say. Our mothers worked in the fields until their water broke. As if labor is a badge, as if misery is a family heirloom. Your husband has not changed. If anything, he's louder now, hungrier, prouder. He pats your belly with the same hand he uses to knock the dogs away from the table. He talks about sons like they're guaranteed. He says your walk is funny now. You laugh, because it's easier than explaining that you're waddling because your pelvic bones feel like they're slowly splitting in half. Your mother-in-law monitors you like a crop. She watches what you eat, how much you sit, how often you get up to relieve yourself. She starts telling you what kind of herbs you'll need for the birth, and what kind of screams are normal. She once gave birth alone, she says, with a towel in her mouth and a broken rib. You try not to imagine it. You fail. At night, sleep is a negotiation. You shift and turn, pile up straw under your knees, wrap a cloth beneath your belly. Nothing helps. The baby kicks hard enough to knock the air from your lungs. Your hips ache. Your ribs are bruised from the inside. You lie next to your husband while he snores and sweat gathers behind your neck. You stare at the wall and count your breaths to pass the time. You're not glowing. You're limping. You're leaking at the breasts and bleeding from the gums and waking up nauseous just to vomit bile into a bucket that no one ever remembers to clean. You haven't felt like a person in weeks. You feel like a vessel, a container being prepared, washed out, filled up, stretched thin. There is no doctor to ask, no midwife until the last moment, just other women, other stories, other warnings. Don't push too early, they say. Don't scream too loud. Don't lie on your back or you'll kill the baby. Don't grip your thighs or you'll make it harder. Don't eat too much. Don't eat too little. Don't be afraid. Don't die. You rub oil on your stomach and pray for quiet. You stir the stew and try not to cry when the weight pulls on your spine. You cut roots, wash rags, Sew a small tunic for a child you haven't met yet. And still, they say, you're lucky. Because some girls miscarry before they even get to this part. Because at least yours is still kicking. Because at least you still have work to do. So you do it. Limping, wincing, hollow-eyed, and bone-tired. You keep moving because stopping means explaining. And you don't have the words left for that anymore. The floor is cold, even through the layers of straw. It's wet too, though you don't know if it's from your own water breaking or the blood that's been coming in thin, steady streams for hours now. Maybe both. You've stopped asking. Your knees are slick. Your thighs shake. There's a splinter pressed into your palm from where you've been gripping the edge of a stool that no one let you sit on. The midwife arrives late and out of breath, already muttering to herself as she strips off her cloak and drops a bundle of cloths beside your head. Her hands are cracked and stained with years of other people's pain. She doesn't smile. She doesn't ask your name. She looks at your stomach, then your face, and then says only one thing. This one's coming hard. You try to breathe the way the neighbor woman taught you, in and out, slow and shallow, like you're blowing on hot soup. It doesn't help. Nothing helps. The pain claws through you like an animal trying to escape. It wraps around your hips, pulls at your spine, rips through your stomach in waves that make you forget what air feels like. You scream once, loud enough that the chickens scatter outside. Your husband says something from the other room. The midwife tells him to shut up. Then she lights a candle. Not for light. There's already fire in the hearth. She lights it and places it near your head, on a plate, then whispers a prayer under her breath. Not for strength. Not for the baby. For your soul. Just in case. You stare at the flame between contractions, willing it not to flicker. As if that tiny light is the last thread tethering you to the world. Your mother-in-law enters the room, presses a damp cloth to your forehead, and says you look pale. You want to laugh, or bite her. But the next wave hits, and all you can do is groan, like the floorboards are coming up through your lungs. Someone brings warm water. It's already cooling by the time they set it down. The rags are soaked with sweat and blood and something green you don't recognize. The smell in the room has shifted. Less human, more animal. A barnyard stink that fills the corners and settles in the back of your throat. The midwife reaches inside you with her hand, and you scream again. She says the baby is turned wrong. She says there's a lot of blood. She says to push if you want to live. So you push. You push with everything you have. You push like your bones are splitting, like your lungs are caving in, like something is trying to be born and something else is trying to die. You're 16 and breaking. They tell you not to grip your thighs, but you do anyway. You dig your nails into your skin to stay awake, to keep from slipping under the pain. The room blurs. The midwife yells something. Someone sobs in the corner. A shadow moves past the window. You wonder if it's death coming to check on you early. And then, finally, a cry. Not yours. A thin, wet wail from something small and new. It cuts through the air like a bell in fog. Your body goes still. You collapse into the straw and hear the midwife mutter, still breathing. You don't know if she means you or the baby. You feel hands pressing on your belly, cloth at your legs, someone lifting your head. The candle is still burning. So, you must still be here. But part of you isn't. Part of you tore away and left with the afterbirth, with the blood, with the girl who was too young for this, but too late to stop it. You close your eyes and listen to the child cry. You don't feel relief. You just feel hollow. When you wake up, the room is dim and spinning. Your mouth is dry, and your legs feel like they've been packed with rocks. There's a sound, high-pitched, shrill, relentless, that takes you a moment to understand. It's the baby, crying, loud and alive. Your body doesn't feel like a body. It feels like an aftermath. Your hands twitch when you try to move them. Your head lolls. Someone presses a cup to your lips, and you sip what tastes like watered-down broth with ashes floating on top. Your husband isn't in the room. He left after the midwife said you weren't dying, just leaking more than expected. Your mother-in-law sits in the corner, sewing like nothing happened, like you didn't scream your voice raw in this same room just hours ago. The midwife is back at the hearth, scrubbing blood out of the rags with lye and muttering about torn skin and weak pulses. You lift your head to see the baby, swaddled in rough cloth, red-faced and furious, fists clenched like he's already preparing for the world to hurt him. You blink, and he blurs. You blink again and realize you're crying. Not from joy, from pain. Because everything between your legs feels wrong, swollen, torn, throbbing like a second heartbeat that's all hurt. You try to shift, and it's like fire snakes up your spine. You gasp, and someone tells you not to move. The midwife glances over and says you tore deep and wide, like she's describing a ditch in the road. She stuffed linen between your legs hours ago to stem the bleeding. It's soaked through, twice. She says not to worry. You're young. You'll heal. But when you ask how long, she shrugs. Depends on the next one, she says, like your body is just a vessel being prepared for round 2. You close your eyes and feel your tears slip into your hairline. There is no celebration, no feast, just cold bread, a stiff cup of ale, and the rustle of your bloodied shift as they change the sheets beneath you. The room still smells like sweat and copper and something sour, like spoiled milk. You try not to gag. Your arms are too weak to lift the baby, so someone places him on your chest. He's small, warm, heavy. You're supposed to feel something. You're supposed to feel like a mother. But all you feel is fear. Fear that the bleeding won't stop. Fear that he'll cry, and you won't know why. Fear that your husband will come back tonight and want you again before your skin remembers how to close. The baby latches. It hurts. Your nipple cracks before he finishes feeding. The midwife says it's normal. The pain, the bleeding, the hollowing out of yourself. Everyone tells you this is a miracle, but it doesn't feel like one. It feels like a gamble. A roll of bones, where you got lucky just by waking up. Another girl down the road wasn't so lucky. Bled out in the night. Her baby lived. They say that's what matters. Her name is spoken less and less each day. No one lights a candle for you now. You're alive, so the prayers are done. But the expectations have just begun. You're told to rest, but also to be grateful, to nurse, to clean yourself, to keep the baby warm, to not bleed on the blankets, to smile when visitors come, to say how beautiful he is, to say how proud you are. You say all of it, even though your insides feel like torn cloth, even though your stomach cramps every time the baby cries, even though you're still leaking blood into rags that used to be napkins, even though no one looks you in the eye anymore, just at the child in your arms. You survived childbirth, which means you've used up a little of your luck, and no one can tell you how much you have left. The baby's crying sounds different today. It's thinner, ragged, like something unraveling from the inside. His skin is hot, too hot, slick with sweat that won't cool. His lips don't latch right. He whimpers when he tries. You shift him from one breast to the other, but it doesn't matter. The milk isn't coming. Your nipples are cracked and leaking pus, not cream. The pain when he tries to suck makes you bite your tongue so hard you taste blood, but you keep trying. You haven't slept. Not really. Not since the bleeding slowed enough for people to stop watching you constantly. Not since your mother-in-law handed you a bowl of cold broth and said, "You're not the first to suffer." That was 3 days ago, or maybe 4. You've stopped keeping track. You wake in soaked linen, sweat and milk and blood, all tangled into your nightdress. Your legs still tremble when you stand, so mostly you don't. Your stomach cramps. Your head swims. You try to keep your eyes open, but they close without permission. The baby screams beside you, or maybe across the room. You're not sure anymore. His skin burns against yours, and when you lift him, his limbs hang heavier than they should. His eyes flutter. You shake him gently. He cries once, then doesn't. Someone calls for the priest. You know what that means. Not a healer, not a midwife, not a woman with herbs or a bucket of cold water. A priest, because they don't expect healing anymore. They expect endings. He arrives with slow, soft steps, already murmuring Latin under his breath. You're propped up against a pillow that smells like mildew and mold, eyes heavy, vision doubled. You see two of him. He's holding a book and a vial of holy water. Not medicine, not comfort, just rituals and hope wrapped in scripture. He looks at the baby, then at you. He doesn't smile. He sprinkles the baby's forehead first, says the words slowly, deliberately. His voice is gentle, like he's apologizing with every syllable. Then he turns to you, dips his fingers in the water, traces a line down your forehead. You flinch. Not from pain, from knowing. They think you might die too. Your breasts throb. Your bones feel carved from firewood. When you close your eyes, you see flickering shapes. A basin of red water, a sheet on the floor, the ghost of your own scream, still echoing in the rafters. You try to speak, but your mouth won't form the words. The baby coughs. A sharp little gasp, then goes quiet again. Your husband isn't in the room. They say he's out looking for more firewood, or maybe just avoiding the sound of death creeping around the cradle. You hear your name, faint. The priest asking if you repent. You nod. You think you do. Maybe for being too weak. Maybe for not loving the baby more. Maybe for not wanting this life, even before it started. The candle beside the bed sputters. The priest whispers something about God's will. Your mother-in-law sobs in the hallway. Someone brings a rag soaked in vinegar and presses it to your chest. It burns. You scream. The baby twitches in his swaddle. Then something shifts. Not much. Just a breath. A noise. A whimper from the tiny bundle in your arms. His lips smack. His fingers curl. He's not dead. Not yet. Neither are you. But the room still smells like endings. You don't sleep. You just lie there, cracked open, stitched by silence and sweat, holding onto something too fragile to name. The candle burns lower. The priest leaves without saying goodbye, just in case. When the fever breaks and the baby finally opens her eyes, the midwife nods once and mutters, "It's a girl." No smile, no warmth, just confirmation, like she's naming the weather. Your mother-in-law clicks her tongue and immediately starts folding the swaddling cloth tighter, as if trying to make the child smaller, easier to ignore. Someone in the corner says, "Ah, well, next time, God willing." You nod, though you don't know why. There's no feast, no wine, no candle at the altar, no neighbor woman bringing sweets or blessing your doorstep. Just silence, like someone dropped a bucket down a dry well. You expected to feel something. Relief, maybe, that she made it, that you did. But all you feel is weight, the kind that settles between your ribs and makes breathing feel impolite. Your husband comes in, peers at the baby like he's inspecting a cut of meat, then shrugs. "Shame," he says, and walks out again. He doesn't ask if she's healthy. He doesn't ask how you're healing. He doesn't ask anything. You hold your daughter tighter. The others leave the room slowly. No one offers congratulations. Just those tight-lipped nods that say more than words. You did what you were supposed to. Produced a child, but you failed the unspoken clause. Produce a son. A boy could have meant pride, protection, a future you could name out loud. A girl means another mouth, another dress, another dowry. Your own mother stops by that evening and brings an old bonnet and some barley soup. She looks at the baby, then at you, then back again. She pats your hand like it's a condolence. Girls are soft, she says gently, but hard on the ears. You nod. She leaves the soup and goes. The next day, the whispers begin. Not cruel, just familiar. She's young. She'll bear again. Maybe the next will be strong. At least the girl can help with the chickens. You pretend not to hear them, but you do. Every word settles into your skin like grit in a wound. When your daughter cries, you rock her gently and hum a song you don't remember learning. Her hands are tiny, clenched like yours used to be. Her mouth searches blindly, rooting for comfort. You offer her your cracked breast, wincing as she latches, praying she never has to feed anyone but herself. At night, you stare at the ceiling while she sleeps beside you. Your stitches throb, your bones ache. You think about the future you've just given birth to, about the years ahead, about the dowry you'll have to build from nothing, about the man she'll be handed to, about the linens, the bleeding, the weight. You think about her walking down the same path you did, head lowered, back straight, mouth closed. You hope she runs. The villagers stop asking how you are. They only ask when you'll try again. As if your body is a broken wheel they're already fixing in their minds. As if your daughter is just a pause, not a product. First one's practice, the butcher's wife says. The next will stick. You don't answer. You just bounce the baby in your arms and whisper that she's more than practice. But even you can't say it too loud. Because in this world, a daughter is pity. A son is legacy. And tonight you only have one of those in your arms. The blood hasn't stopped. Not entirely. It slows then returns, like a tide you can't predict, soaking through rags and linens and whatever cloth you can find that isn't already ruined. You wake up damp, not just from the leaking but from sweat, milk, and the sick, sweet smell of your own healing gone wrong. Your pelvis feels like it's been cracked apart and nailed back together with rusted wire. Every step grinds. Every breath reminds you that your body is still mid-collapse. But you don't get to collapse. You're nursing, constantly. Your daughter cries every hour and latches with frantic, desperate pulls that make your toes curl and your eyes water. Your nipples crack and bleed. One side weeps, even when she's not near it. You try to catch the milk with a rag, but everything soaks through. The baby spits up half of what she drinks, then demands more. Your arms go numb from holding her. Your back knots from hunching. You haven't slept longer than 15 minutes in 3 days. Still, he wants you. Your husband waits exactly 2 weeks before reaching for you in the dark again. Not with tenderness, not with hesitation. Just a grunt and a hand on your thigh, the same way he reaches for the last piece of bread at supper. You don't even have time to speak before he's already pressing down, already claiming what he's decided is his. You tell him you're not healed. He tells you you're not broken. You tell him it hurts. He tells you to breathe through it. You try. You try not to cry. You try not to scream. You bite the inside of your cheek until you taste blood again and you think, is this the only flavor I ever get to have now? When it's over, he rolls away. Just like before. Just like always. You lie there, raw and wet and open, milk leaking from one side and blood from the other, and realize you've become a landscape of need. Everyone's but your own. Your mother-in-law says it's good he still wants you, that some men go to taverns, that you should be grateful he comes home. You nod while changing the cloth under your skirt for the 3rd time that morning. Your daughter cries from the cradle. Your stitches sting when you bend. You grit your teeth and stand anyway. There is no recovery, just continuation. You cook while bleeding. You clean while leaking. You scrub your husband's undergarments while your own still smell like iron and sour milk. When you try to sit by the fire and rest, someone calls your name. When you pause to exhale, someone hands you something. A dish, a baby, a bucket. They say you look tired, but no one tells you to stop. Because your body isn't yours anymore. It belongs to the baby who feeds from it. It belongs to the man who climbs on top of it. It belongs to the household that depends on it. You are the thing that runs the machine. And machines aren't allowed to break. At night, when the baby sleeps and the house goes quiet, you trace the bruises blooming along your thighs. You press your fingers to the deepest part of your pelvis and wonder how something broken can still be used like it's whole. You whisper a prayer, but not to God, to your own skin, to your bones, to whatever part of you still remembers what rest felt like. And then you lie back down, because the baby will cry soon. And your husband is already stirring. You're bent over the same splintered bucket you used last winter to catch snowmelt, except now it holds bile and last night's barley. Your hair clings to your face, your shoulders are shaking, and the only thing louder than your retching is the baby crying in the next room. She doesn't stop. She hasn't stopped in hours. Maybe she's hungry. Maybe she's teething. Maybe she just knows that something in the air has changed, and not for the better. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve, which already smells like milk and old sweat. You sit on the cold floor, forehead pressed to your knees, and try to will the world away, just for a minute, just long enough to not be in this body anymore. Your body, except it doesn't feel like yours. Not now, not after everything, not with your stomach turning sour every morning, not with your breasts already tender again, not with the phantom weight already beginning to settle in your hips. You know what this is. You don't need the calendar. You don't need the midwife. You've seen enough women bend over these same buckets to know the signs. You're pregnant. Again. Less than a year since the last time. Less than a year since you screamed on a bed of straw and bled into your own hands. Less than a year since the priest came with oil and last rites and a look in his eyes that said one of you won't make it, but you did, barely. And now it's happening again. Your husband doesn't ask how you feel. He only asks what's for supper. You say stew. He says fine. Then he drinks, because he says it helps him sleep. You stare at his cup and wish you could drink too. Not for sleep, but for escape. But you can't, because you're carrying something again. Because everything you do now has consequences. Even surviving. You pick up your daughter, who is red-faced and wet with tears. She clings to your shift, fists full of fabric and snot, and wails into your chest like you're the one who hurt her. You sway, because that's what you're supposed to do. You whisper a song, the same one your mother used to hum when she was too tired to sing. You bounce her gently, slowly, like you're not shaking inside. Your back already hurts. Your legs already tremble when you stand. You haven't stopped bleeding entirely since the first birth, and now your belly is swelling again, small but unmistakable. You touch it once, lightly, as if it might go away if you ask nicely. It doesn't. Your mother-in-law notices before you say anything. She watches the way you dry heave behind the barn, the way you press your hand to your stomach while scrubbing clothes. She smiles. She says, "Good, that means your body works." You nod, because nodding is easier than screaming. The days blur. The baby cries. Your husband snores. The ache in your spine gets sharper. The world narrows into cycles. Feeding, cleaning, bleeding, vomiting. You sleep in fragments. Minutes, maybe. When you close your eyes, you dream of falling into a well and no one pulling you out. You wake up with your heart racing, then hear the baby and realize you don't even get to finish the nightmare. You're praying now, not for strength, not for health, just for silence, for sleep, for one day where your body doesn't betray you and your life doesn't feel like a punishment with laundry. You whisper to the ceiling while the baby sucks at your breast and your stomach rolls with nausea. You whisper things you'd never dare say aloud, that you don't want this, that you're tired, that you're afraid the next time you won't come back. But no one answers. So you rock the baby. You wipe your mouth, and you go back to the bucket. The second baby is smaller than the first. Quieter, too. He comes early, too early. And even the midwife doesn't pretend to lie. She doesn't say strong lungs or good color, or just give him time. She wraps him tight, places him on your chest, and says nothing at all. His cry is more of a gasp, a wet rattle you feel more than hear. You count 5 of them, maybe 6, then it stops. The room stays silent. No one rushes to light the candle this time. No oil, no whispered prayers, just a rag soaked with blood and your own breath catching in your throat like a stone. The midwife looks away. Your mother-in-law picks up the basin and dumps it outside. You stay frozen beneath the weight of a body that already knows it won't last. When your husband comes in, he doesn't speak either, just looks, nods once, and walks back out. Like he expected it. Like something in your blood already wrote this ending before it began. Later that night, he drinks until he snores and leaves his bowl half full on the table. You stare at it while the baby lies stiff in the cradle, bundled so tight he looks like he never existed at all. You bury him 2 days later. The ground is still hard from frost, and the priest's hands shake as he blesses the earth. The box is no bigger than a loaf of bread. You carry it yourself. No one argues. They let you. Maybe because no one else wants to. Maybe because they've already forgotten the name. No one brings flowers. The 3rd baby makes it. A girl, wide-eyed and hungry. You hold her closer than you should, afraid the gods will take it as pride and snatch her too. You don't sleep more than a few hours for months, and even when she's warm and breathing and full, you still wake up reaching for her, terrified the silence means the worst. But then the 4th comes, and she doesn't stay. You don't remember the pain this time, just the sound of cloth being wrung out and the slow drizzle of something red onto the floorboards. The midwife is older now, quieter. She says you bled too soon. She says the baby didn't move. She says it happens. A lot. She says you should rest. But you don't. You wash the sheets. You feed the 3rd child. You cook soup. You scrub the cradle until your fingers split. Then you stop looking at it. The village starts whispering after that. You hear them at the well. Some women aren't meant for bearing. Maybe she sinned. Maybe she brought something back with her from the 2nd one. The old widow with the crooked teeth touches her beads when you walk by. The priest prays longer when you kneel. Your own mother starts talking about curses. But you don't say anything. You just keep walking, keep bleeding, keep folding the same swaddles that never get used. One morning, your daughter, your only living one, finds you standing by the cradle again. Empty. Always empty. She asks if a new baby is coming. You shake your head. She nods, too young to understand what that really means. Then she climbs onto your lap and lays her head on your chest, and you sit there, rocking back and forth, listening to the silence stretch. You bury a child, and then another, and the world keeps turning like it never met them. And the worst part isn't the pain or the blood or the stares. It's how the cradle still creaks when the wind moves through the house, as if something's still there, as if memory has weight, as if ghosts know their way home. You hear about it first from the butcher's youngest, the one who doesn't know when to stop talking. He's chasing chickens through the lane and blurts out that he saw your husband with the alewife, laughing too hard, standing too close. You laugh it off, even smile, but the smile doesn't reach your ribs. Later, the miller's wife leans in a little too close while weighing your flour and says, "Men will be men," like it's a blessing, like it's something you should be grateful for. You tell yourself it's just talk, just noise, just village women licking salt from old wounds, until it's not. Until he comes home smelling like thyme and sweat and someone else's skin. Until he kisses your cheek with a mouth that doesn't taste like beer but like rose water. Until he stops looking you in the eye when he lifts your skirt, like even your body now is a chore, a tired routine. You ask him, quiet at first, careful, measured. You choose your words like they might explode. He shrugs. She's cleaner than you. You ask again. You ask if it's true. if he's really lying down with the woman who sells diluted ale and hikes her skirts behind the smokehouse. He spits on the floor. She listens, he says. Doesn't cry about blood and babies. You flinch, but you don't cry. You learned how to stop crying when the third baby came out gray, and you still had to milk the goat that same afternoon. You stand there, fists at your sides, breath like a fist in your chest, and wait for the apology that doesn't come. It doesn't come. Instead, he slams the door so hard, the beam above it shakes loose a bit of dust, and your daughter stirs in her cradle. You go to her and tuck her blanket tighter and whisper nothing, because there's nothing safe left to say. The next morning, you go to the priest. Not because you think he'll fix it, but because you want someone to tell you you're not mad. You sit with your hands folded and your head bowed, and you say, "He's with another woman." The priest adjusts his stole, clears his throat, and says, "Have you been obedient?" He asks if you've given your husband cause to wander, if you've denied him, if your heart has been kind. You say, "I was bleeding." He says, "Forgiveness is holy." He blesses your forehead and tells you to pray harder, as if prayer will turn your husband's hand, as if God is waiting to reward your silence. You go home. Your husband doesn't. You see him 2 days later, with the laundress now, the one with the red shawl and the laugh that cuts through air like a blade. They don't even pretend. They don't care if you see. In fact, you think they want you to. You keep walking. You say nothing. The neighbors have stopped meeting your eyes. You scrub harder. You cook hotter meals. You kneel longer at church. You say the priest's words like they're your own. When your husband finally returns, drunk and sour, he lays down beside you like he never left. He grunts when he climbs over you, and you close your eyes and imagine your body is made of bark, silent, hollow, already dead. Afterward, he tells you to stop looking so sour. You smile, because you're supposed to, because your daughter is watching, because the village already thinks it's your fault, because you've learned that a woman who speaks too loudly about betrayal is more dangerous than the man who commits it. You lie in bed and listen to him snore. You wonder if the alewife sings to him, if the laundress kisses him without flinching, if either of them carries his shame for him the way you do. You wonder when it became easier to blame you than to leave him. You wonder how long until your daughter learns to smile like this too. It starts with the soup. "Too thin," she says, even though you boiled the bones for hours and stretched the barley until it barely had the strength to float. She scowls at her bowl, sets it down untouched, and mutters something about how her own mother never had to chew broth. You ignore it, because she's always finding reasons to sigh. But this time, the sigh lingers like smoke. She stands slowly, stiff knees cracking, and says it out loud. No wonder he sleeps elsewhere. You stop stirring, just for a second, just long enough for the spoon to sink beneath the surface and disappear. After that, it gets worse. She says you don't clean the hearth properly, that the sheets smell of mildew, that your daughter's hair is too wild and your hands are too soft, that a real wife would already have a son on her hip and bread in the oven. When you speak, she cuts you off. When you're silent, she fills the room with her own voice, clucking and groaning and rearranging the furniture like dominance is measured in stool placement. Then she moves into your room, her own space, small, quiet, with just enough distance to pretend she wasn't listening to every cough and murmur through the walls, is suddenly not enough. She claims her legs ache, that the stairs are too steep, that she's old and needs to be close to the fire. But you know better. She wants to watch you, judge you, smother you in the stale scent of her night breath and the constant hum of her disapproval. You sleep on the edge of the mattress now. One side is occupied by your child, the other by your mother-in-law, who snores through her nose and mutters prayers in her sleep, as if even unconscious she's still reminding you who's closer to God. She calls you barren, not just in words, but in tone, in glances, in the way she offers advice to the girl next door about fertility herbs without looking in your direction. The midwife mentioned once that your body runs cold, and she's repeated it ever since, like a sermon. She tells your husband you were probably cursed at birth, that your blood is sour, that your womb is a room no child wants to stay in. He says nothing. He just drinks and chews and leaves the table early. Sometimes she watches you feed your daughter and says, "A girl like that won't keep a man's name alive." As if your child's mere existence is a disappointment. As if the fact she's breathing is an insult to her family tree. You want to scream. You want to pack a sack and take your daughter and walk until your feet bleed. But where would you go? What would you eat? There's no world outside this one that wants you more. You married into a home, not a family. And now that home is slowly swallowing you. When you cry, she hears it and clicks her tongue. When you don't, she says you've gone hard and heartless. You try to talk to the priest. He says a wife must be humble, that an elder's wisdom is a gift, that shared space brings shared spirit. You stare at the stone wall behind him and imagine throwing something at it, just to see if it cracks. At night, you wrap your daughter in your arms and whisper stories into her hair. You tell her of soft beds and warm mornings and women who aren't made of sharp edges. You tell her she'll be free, even if the word tastes like a lie. And your mother-in-law snores beside you, as if she's earned the right to sleep easy, as if your suffering is just another feather in her cap, as if this room, this bed, this breath, this life belongs more to her than to you. There's blood again. You notice it when you squat by the river, rinsing your daughter's shift against the rocks. It trickles down your thigh, warm and slow, painting your skin the same shade as the berries she tried to eat the week before. You wipe it with your palm, rinse it in the current, and say nothing. Because this isn't new. This isn't even surprising. It's just Tuesday. The bleeding never really stops. Not fully. It retreats for a few days, pretends to be gone, then returns, quiet, insistent, like a debt you forgot to pay. You don't mark a calendar anymore. There's no point. 1 month it's your courses, the next it's the small life that slid out of you before it even kicked. The month after that, it's your husband, red-fisted and grunting in the dark, his weight pinning you down while your bones scream and your body remembers everything it hasn't had time to forget. Sometimes you bleed from too much, sometimes from not enough. The cloths you use are never dry. They hang by the hearth in a permanent state of damp, thin as breath, always stained. Your daughter once asked why Mama's skirts always smell like iron. You told her it was nothing. You always say that now. Nothing, nothing, nothing. The midwife says it happens to some women, that your womb is a soft-mouthed thing, quick to spill. She shrugs as she says it, like it's weather. You want to ask why your husband doesn't spill, why he doesn't wake soaked in his own proof of existence, why he gets to walk upright while you wince just from sitting. You try to rest. You're told to rest, but not too much. Rest is laziness. Rest means you're not pulling your weight. So you sweep the floors with rags between your legs. You knead bread with cramps that twist your spine. You kiss your husband goodnight with a smile stretched so tight your jaw aches. Because if you stop smiling, they say you're hysterical. They say you're spoiled, ungrateful, touched. So you bleed in silence. You bleed while your mother-in-law mutters prayers over her rosary and glares when you limp. You bleed while the priest preaches about Eve's sin and how womanhood is a burden made holy. You bleed while the neighbor girl boasts about her 7th month, and you try not to think about the cold heap you buried last spring. Your husband doesn't ask why the sheets are stained. He just frowns and says, "Be cleaner." He doesn't notice when you flinch during supper, doesn't see the pale half-moons beneath your eyes. He only notices when the fire dies too soon or the broth isn't salted. You try to plug yourself like a leak. Cloth, ash paste, herbs, nothing holds. The blood finds its way out, always. It doesn't gush. It seeps, slow and steady. A reminder, a warning, a threat. You wonder how much a body can lose before it forgets how to hold itself together. Your daughter draws a red flower on the hearth wall with soot and spit. She says it's pretty. You tell her it is. You don't tell her it looks exactly like your insides. There are moments, rare and cruel, when you forget. You laugh at something. You bend without pain. You almost dance when no one is watching. But then it returns. That wet, warm bloom between your legs, that ache in your lower back, that sting when you wipe, it always returns. You once heard a woman say she bled for 2 years and then simply died. You wonder if that's what's coming. But no one asks. No one cares. Because as long as the bread rises and the baby stops crying and the floor is swept and the water is hot, you are fine. You are fine. Even when you're bleeding. Always bleeding. And no one ever thinks to ask why. You hear it through the wall, the way most bad things begin. His voice, low and bitter, hers sharp and scornful. Your name slips between the cracks of the timber like smoke. She's no use now, she says, as if you're not upstairs folding the same cloth diaper for the 4th time just to keep your hands busy. The dowry's long spent. The babies are dead, and he still comes home hungry. He doesn't defend you. He doesn't say your name kindly. He just says, maybe there's a way to undo it. Undo it. Like you're a knot, a mistake, something that can be pulled apart and forgotten. You sit perfectly still on the edge of the straw mattress. The child that lived is asleep beside you, her breath soft and uneven. You smooth her hair and try not to shake. The walls are too thin. So is your silence. They stop speaking when they realize how loud they've been, but by then it's too late. The words are already burned into the back of your eyes. You mouth them over and over like a prayer you don't believe in. Annulment. As if your years of bleeding and bending and bearing weren't real. As if you could be erased, sent back to the village that gave you away, and told never to return. Your parents wouldn't take you in. They couldn't afford to feed you before, and you've only become another mouth since. You picture the road home, long and muddy, and lined with the same eyes that watched you leave in white. Now you'd return in shame. They wouldn't weep for you. They'd pity you. That's worse. You don't say anything the next morning. Not at breakfast when your husband refuses to meet your eyes. Not when your mother-in-law mutters about failed crops and failed women in the same breath. Not when the child trips and hits her chin and you scoop her up and whisper, "It's all right," even though you have no proof of that anymore. You stop speaking so much. You keep your head down. You stir slower. You press your lips together when the priest comes and glances between you and your husband like a judge weighing spoiled meat. He asks if you've been faithful. You nod. You ask if you've been a burden. You don't. They start talking to you like you've already gone. If she goes, we could ask for a better match, she says, loud enough for the window to carry it. One with sisters. One with land. You don't go to the window anymore. You don't want to know who they're pointing to. You cry more now, but only at night. Only into the cradle your daughter's outgrown. You muffle the sound with your apron, your hand, the blanket. You cry into your work, into the basin, into the smell of bread that won't rise. Your daughter asks if you're sick. You say yes, but it's not the kind anyone can see. It's the kind that settles into your lungs and keeps you from breathing fully. The kind that makes your limbs heavy and your words vanish before they can escape your throat. Some days, you imagine packing a bag, leaving on your own, walking until the path forgets your name. But you don't. Because where would you go? Who would keep your daughter warm? Who would hold her when the toothache comes, or the fever sneaks in? You stay, not because you're wanted, but because she is. They don't say the word again, not in front of you, but the silence changes. You feel it hovering, waiting. A hammer raised, unsure where to strike. You're not a wife anymore. You're a cost, a regret, a discussion waiting for approval. You fold the cloth, you hold the child, You pray to no one, and you wait for the door to open behind you. He comes just after dusk, when the hearth has gone low, and your husband has stumbled off to the barn with ale on his breath. Your daughter is asleep, curled against the wall like a kitten seeking warmth, and you're left with the stew pot and the ash and the ache that lives in your lower back like a tenant who stopped paying rent years ago. You don't expect him. He doesn't knock. He steps through the threshold like he owns it, robes catching the breeze, the scent of candle wax and old bread clinging to him. He says he's here for your soul. You almost laugh, not because it's funny, but because he says it like it's something you still have. He doesn't sit. He hovers. His eyes flick from the cradle to the stew to the torn cloth drying by the fire. Then they land on you. He asks how your prayers have been. You say quiet. He nods, like that's the right answer. Then he tells you he's concerned, that the house speaks of suffering, that your heart may be shadowed by bitterness, that women in pain sometimes stray from God. You tell him you haven't strayed. He doesn't blink. He steps closer. He says penance will help, that purity returns through obedience, that sin clings to the wounded like mud on boots, that he can help wash it away. Then he reaches out and touches your hair, just the end of it, where it's come loose from your braid, damp from the steam of the pot. But it's enough. Enough to freeze your lungs, enough to make your fingers curl into your skirt, enough to make you remember you are not safe just because someone says bless you before leaving. You want to move, but you don't. He tells you your husband's neglect is a test, that your womb's silence may be punishment, that shame can be cleansed, but only if you open yourself to holy correction. He says this while his hand brushes your shoulder, casual, as if you're not flesh but parchment, something to be marked. You nod, because nodding is safer than refusal. He tells you to kneel. You do, because that's what you've been trained to do. At church, at home, in bed. He places his hand on your head and begins a prayer. It's in Latin. You don't know the words, but you know the tone. It's the same one your husband uses when telling the dog to heel. When he finishes, he doesn't remove his hand. He leans down close enough that his breath touches your ear and whispers something you don't catch. Or maybe you do and just decide to pretend you didn't. Then he leaves. No blessing. No holy water. No promise of return. Just the creak of the door and the cold that follows behind him like guilt. You stay on your knees for a long time after. Not in reverence, not in prayer. Just because standing suddenly feels impossible. You don't tell anyone. Not your daughter. Not your husband. Not the neighbor who saw him leave and raised an eyebrow but said nothing. You don't even tell the woman at the well who gossips like it's her job. Because you know what they'll say. You know what they'll ask. What you did. What you wore. What you allowed. So you bury it like you bury everything else. Beneath chores. Beneath silence. Beneath the bruises that don't bloom but still live under your skin. The next Sunday, you go to Mass. You kneel when told. You sing the hymns. You avoid his eyes. But you feel them. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. You leave before communion. Because you're not sure what's worse now. The sin you didn't commit, or the silence you've chosen to keep. Either way, you know God isn't the one watching. You think about it at dawn, when the world is still gray, and the house hasn't started breathing yet, when the fire is only embers, and your husband's snores echo like warnings. You press your hands to the wash basin, watch the steam rise, and picture the road. It's long, cold, empty, but it doesn't shout at you. It doesn't grab your wrist. It doesn't ask for anything except your feet. You imagine picking up your daughter, wrapping her in a blanket, slipping through the door with nothing but what fits in a cloth sack. No shoes, just soles, no map, just hope. You'd walk down the path past the well, past the fields, past the last post that marks the edge of the village, and you'd keep going, until no one knew your name. But then you hear the baby cough, the stew bubble, the dog scratch at the door, and suddenly the weight of the world presses back down on your shoulders, exactly where you left it. You've never even been to the next village. You wouldn't know the way if the sun drew a line for you to follow. You can't read the signs nailed to trees. You don't know who'd open their door to a woman with chapped hands and no ring on her finger anymore. No dowry, no name anyone wants to remember. You wouldn't even know how to ask for work, or water, or shelter. You barely know how to ask for kindness. You stir the pottage. You add more water so it stretches further. Your daughter tugs on your sleeve and asks when Papa will wake up. You tell her soon. You don't tell her what he smells like when he does. Some nights you lie awake and try to list your options. You say them softly under your breath like spells. You could go to the church, but the priest has his own hunger. You could go to the widow on the hill, but she locks her door even in daylight. You could go to the woods, but what lives there doesn't take kindly to the sound of crying children and rustling skirts. You think of your feet, how they crack in winter even when they don't travel. You think of how far you'd get before someone noticed you were gone, before someone came after you, and what they'd do when they caught you. You stay. You always stay. And in between the laundry and the bruises and the bleeding, you dream. You dream of forests thick with silence, of rivers that don't ask questions, of strangers who give you bread without wanting your body in return. You dream of somewhere, anywhere, that doesn't know who you are, doesn't care where you came from, doesn't call you failure behind clenched teeth. You dream of standing straight, of laughing without fear, of being seen without being watched. But dreams don't boil water. They don't salt the stew. They don't change the way your daughter looks at you with that soft, trembling hope that maybe today will be gentle. So you keep your head down. You scrape the bottom of the pot. You listen to the wind rattle the shutters and pretend it's just weather, not warning. And when the door creaks open and the world presses its weight against you again, you nod. You take the cup. You kneel when asked. You dream of running, but you never do. She sits on the edge of the stool, trying not to swing her legs. Her feet don't reach the floor yet, but she keeps her back straight, fingers folded neatly in her lap, like she's been told to behave, to sit like a wife. She's wearing her best dress, blue wool, hem stitched with uneven flowers, and her hair is brushed to a shine, tied back with a ribbon too bright for the room she's in. You offer her a cup of warm milk. She says thank you. She's polite, eager. Her eyes scan the room like she's memorizing it, like she wants to remember this moment before everything shifts. She tells you she's betrothed now. She says it proudly, with the voice of someone repeating something she's only half sure she understands. She tells you he has a horse, that he smiled at her once, that her father says it's a good match, and her mother cried with happiness, not sadness, she thinks. You nod and smile because it's easier than answering. Because what is there to say to a girl still collecting pebbles in her pocket and making up songs about bees? She doesn't know yet. She doesn't know that her wedding dress will be stiff and borrowed and smell like the cedar chest where it's been hiding for years. She doesn't know the shoes will blister before she even reaches the altar. She doesn't know the wine will be sour, and the room too hot, and the old women will whisper things she won't understand until it's too late. You ask if she wants her hair braided. She nods, eager, and moves to sit between your knees. You work slowly, gently, like you're threading through the last strands of innocence before it slips out the door. Her hair is soft and fine, and she leans into your touch without fear. She asks if it hurts the first time. Her voice is too casual, too light, like someone who's overheard bits of conversation and tried to string them together. You pause for just a moment, long enough for her to notice, then resume braiding. You say it's different for everyone, because that's the safest version of the truth. She keeps talking. She wants to know if there will be dancing, if he'll kiss her hand, if her name will sound different when she says it beside his. She asks if she'll be brave. She looks at you, her eyes wide and hopeful, like you have answers folded in your apron. You want to tell her everything. You want to wrap your arms around her and say, "No, not yet. Stay a little longer in the world where flowers matter more than rings." But the world is already moving. The papers are already signed. The sheep already counted. So you hand her a comb. You tell her to keep it, that it's lucky, that it belonged to someone who once had hair just like hers. You don't say who. You don't say what happened to that girl. You don't say that luck runs out quicker than thread when you're promised before you're ready. You walk her back to the door when her aunt calls. You wave goodbye and watch her disappear into the fading light, her hair bouncing behind her in a neat, hopeful braid. And when she's gone, you sit down in the same spot she did, comb still warm from her hands. You stare at the fire, and you pray. Not for miracles, not for joy, just that the pain passes quickly, that someone will hold her hand after, that she doesn't learn to hide her hurt behind polite smiles and folded hands, that she survives her wedding night with something still hers. You wake with the ache again, behind your knees, deep in your hips, low and steady like a warning bell tolling through your bones. The mattress sags more than it did last winter, and you feel every splinter in the floorboards when you swing your feet down. It's still dark. The hearth is cold. Your breath curls in front of your lips like mist. You're 24, but your knees groan like your grandmother's did the year before she died. You wrap the shawl around your shoulders and press your hand to your lower back. Nothing stops the ache. Not the salves, not the herbs, not the whispered prayers muttered into the steam rising off your tea. You've grown used to the creak of your own joints. They sound like old stairs or the church pews when someone shifts their weight during Mass. It's not pain anymore. It's just how you move now. The cradle rocks gently beside the hearth, not from your hand, not yet, but from the last motion you gave it before you fell asleep sitting up again. Your youngest is still breathing in that shallow way newborns do, soft and fluttery, like a bird trapped in cloth. You lean over and adjust the blanket, your fingers numb, your shoulders sore. Somewhere upstairs, a rat scratches at the roof. You don't flinch. You've stopped flinching. Your hair started thinning after the third child. You noticed the clumps on the comb first, then the cold patches near your temples that didn't used to feel like bone. You tried covering it with scarves, braiding it tighter. But your husband said nothing, not even when the bald spot shone in the morning sun like a wound. He doesn't look at you much now. You see him watching the milkmaid. She's 16, maybe 17. Rosy-cheeked and bright-eyed, still giggling at the smallest jokes, her hands never yet blistered. She smells like oats and goat milk and the possibility of softness. You see the way he leans against the fence when she's fetching the pails, how his voice drops into something lighter when she passes, how he lingers too long when he brings her payment. She giggles. That high-pitched laugh that once belonged to you. You say nothing. There's nothing to say that won't come back to bruise you. You stir the porridge, rock the cradle, mend the sleeves. Your daughter needs shoes. Your son needs less fever. Your husband needs food. You keep track of the firewood and the frost, and the days since the priest last visited. Your body is always moving, even when it begs to stop. You see your reflection once in the basin. Hollow cheeks, graying edges near your ears, a mouth that doesn't remember smiling, except when someone else is watching. Your teeth throb at night. You chew soft bread slower now. Sometimes when you laugh, a metallic taste creeps into your tongue. You press a rag to your gums. You don't cry anymore. At 24, they call you madam now. They ask you for remedies and advice and how to clean a bleeding rag without drawing crows. The younger ones glance at you like a warning. The older ones forget you're not quite their age. You stopped being a girl the moment you first bled onto a wedding sheet. That was a lifetime ago. You don't mark your birthday. You mark births, deaths, The day the cow stopped giving milk. The day your second child coughed blood and you had to hold her down so she wouldn't scare her sister. You rock the cradle. The baby stirs, cries once, then quiets. Your husband doesn't come in right away. He's likely with the milkmaid again, pretending not to notice the wind lifting her hem. You imagine him wiping his hands on his tunic, pretending nothing happened, sitting down at the table with a grunt and a demand for stew. You won't argue. You'll serve it warm. You'll keep rocking. Because that's what old women do. They say it to your face, as if it's something you need reminding of, as if you've forgotten. One of the older women pats your hand and says, "You were lucky, truly. Look at you, all in one piece." She nods like that settles it, as if being unbroken on the outside is the only proof that matters. You smile the way you were taught. Small, pleasant, grateful. You don't tell her that your left hip still clicks from the second birth, that your hearing never fully returned after the fever, that you sometimes forget words mid-sentence and pretend it's because you're tired instead of hollow. You weren't beaten, they say, not like others, not like Marta, whose husband left bruises in the shape of his belt buckle, not like Elsbeth, who disappeared after one wrong word. You were spared. That's what they call it. Spared. They don't count the bruises that don't bloom on skin. They don't name the wounds that come from being ignored, from being touched like a task, from hearing your name only when something is needed. They don't see the nights you sit awake, blinking into the dark, afraid to close your eyes in case the silence presses too hard against your chest. You weren't starved. Not truly. There was always some stew left, some crust to scrape, the barley stretched with water and wild greens and prayers. Your bones didn't stick out the way hers did. You kept your strength. They forget that hunger is more than food, that it shows up in other places, that your stomach growled less than your soul. You only lost 3 babies. That's the part that always makes you still. Only. Like it was a tax. Like the price was fair. You stopped counting days after the 3rd. There was no use in naming mornings when you didn't hear crying. You kept their shifts tucked in the bottom drawer. Sometimes you touch the fabric just to remember what softness used to feel like. But still, they call you lucky. Because you had one child who lived. Because your husband never raised his fist. Because the roof never caved in, and the cows didn't rot, and you still have all your teeth, mostly. Because you only scream at night sometimes. Quietly. Into the blanket, into the cradle, into your own chest. So the sound doesn't wake anyone but you. You bite the edge of your palm and rock back and forth when the dreams come too close to the truth. You tell yourself to be quiet, to be still. That morning is coming. You light the fire. You salt the stew. You fold the linen that will never cover another newborn. And when the women gather at the well, you nod along. You agree. You say, yes, I'm blessed. Because they need you to. Because saying anything else makes the air feel heavy and the water taste strange. Because grief makes people uncomfortable when it doesn't come with tears and a set timeline. Because if you're not lucky, then maybe they aren't either. So you carry it. Like your own secret curse, stitched beneath your ribs. You press your fingers to your temples when the memories surge. You whisper into your daughter's hair that she'll have more joy, more Joyce, more voice. You hope it's not a lie. And when someone says it again, you were lucky. You smile, same as always, and you tell them softly, yes, I know. Even if your bones say otherwise, it happens without ceremony. No trumpet, no blessing, just a morning like any other, when you stand up from the straw mattress and realize your legs are clean, the cloth between your thighs is dry. No ache coils in your gut, no spotting, no warning, just silence, deep and unfamiliar. You wait, thinking it's a trick, that it'll return tomorrow or next week or the moment you bend too quickly. But the days pass, and your belly stays still. You touch it sometimes, half in mourning, half in awe. It's over. The bleeding, the guessing, the fear that every cramp might mean life or death. It's gone. You're 50, maybe more. The church keeps no clear count for women like you. No one marks your age in candles or feast days. But your joints are stiff in the mornings, and your teeth hum with cold. Your hair has thinned so much that you wear a scarf even when you're alone. You move slower. You speak less. Your husband is gone. Dead, some say. The fever took him in a week. Head to toe, shaking, and wet. You sat beside him until his last breath, not because of love, but because it would have been worse to let him die alone. Others say he didn't die, that he left, married a widow in another village who still bore children and cooked with cream. You don't bother correcting them. Either way, he's not here. That's enough. You don't miss him. You miss space, breath, time, things that were always his before. Now the house creaks in a different rhythm. You light your own fire when you please. You braid your hair for no one. You eat standing up if you want to. You wear wool in summer. You wear linen in winter. You do things out of order, and no one scolds you. No one asks where you've been or who you've spoken to. You are, at last, invisible. They don't see you at the market. Don't ask you for herbs or favors. Young girls walk past with baskets and red mouths, talking of weddings and names scrawled in hidden corners. They glance at you and look away quickly, afraid of the shape their future might become. That used to sting. Now it feels like freedom. You spend more time near the river, more time walking without reason. You whisper names into the wind, the babies, the friends, the pieces of yourself that didn't make it. You watch the birds and feel no urge to catch them. You watch the girls and feel no urge to warn them. They will learn. Everyone does. Sometimes the dreams still come, the ones with blood and silence and locked doors. You wake with a cry stuck in your throat and fingers clutching the blanket like it might save you. But the panic fades faster now. You know how to breathe through it. You light a candle when it's darkest, not for guidance, but for proof. You're still here. You boil herbs for your joints. You hum to yourself. You speak aloud, even when no one's listening. Your voice doesn't shake anymore. It's not beautiful. It doesn't have to be. You survived. That word tastes different now. Not like triumph, not like glory. More like moss, like stone, like something ancient and unmovable. You wear it quietly. You sit by the fire and stitch for no one. You close your eyes and let the weight of all the years press gently, not like a burden, but like a blanket, not gone, not forgotten, just settled. And when the wind whistles through the cracks in the wall and the candle flickers, you don't flinch. You breathe. You rest. You stop bleeding. Finally,